Penguin Random House Audio presents Polite Society by Mahesh Rao. Read for you by Deepti Gupta. Part 1. Chapter 1. Ania lay on the hardwood floor in her bedroom and grappled with her thoughts. If she were given a choice between saving art or literature for humanity, she decided that she would preserve literature. This seemed only natural, given that she was about to begin her third attempt at a novel. Her bedroom contained a number of Edward Rouchet screen prints, recently transported from the family's art storage facility in Gurgaon. But she would willingly give them up for a lifetime of excellent books. It was not unusual for Ania to contemplate drastic hypothetical choices in this way. The comforts of her own life meant that she was seldom called upon to discriminate or restrict. In the Khurana household, they usually ordered 4 of everything. As a result, this kind of grandiose conjecture had always come to her as something of an exertion, but also a thrill. She sat up and looked at the screen prints. A series of disjointed words poured over a burnt orange sky. They were the most recent constituent in the refurbishment of her bedroom, a process that was as inevitable as the seasons, although far more capricious. Some unexpected good news would involve the replacement of a chaise longue or a reupholstering of the window seat. A foreign trip often resulted in sudden inspiration and a hasty call to Delhi's most exclusive bed linen suppliers. After she had finished reading I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Ania had decided that the hand-painted wallpaper on the far wall had to be replaced. Its birdcage motif seemed to exude a cruel symbolism. The only constant in the room was the view from the French doors. The reclaimed Andalusian tiles on the balcony floor, the wrought-iron balustrade, the rich dappling of the gulmohar trees, and in the distance, the hum of cars making their way through the grandeur of Prithviraj Road. The constant redecoration was no secret, and it was often a delicate matter, having to refuse the eager services of the wives of her father's friends, many of whom had set up interior design businesses a few years into their marriages. But the Khuranas were firm believers in setting boundaries when it suited them. "Your aesthetic is simply wonderful, but we try not to mix business with friendship. It would be terrible to jeopardize such a close relationship," Ania would say. The wives would say goodbye and walk down the front steps of the Khurana mansion, casting a forlorn look at the gleaming white facade, the many sets of French doors that caught the evening sun, the stone urns that looked as though they had been in place for generations. But by the time they had swept out of the driveway, the balm of Ania's expression of closeness would have soothed their wounded pride. In any case, they retained the hope that evidence of their flawless taste would eventually persuade Ania to change her mind. There were, after all, 5 Khurana homes around the world to accommodate the wives' ceaseless creativity. The Rouchet prints were gorgeous, but Ania could live without them. She could live without the mismatched lamps and the antique rosewood desk and the perfectly lit dressing room. But literature was not negotiable. She allowed herself the grace of a few moments to think about her new novel. She had finally settled on a title, The Enigma of My Effigies. And as with her previous attempts, this important decision firmed up her intent and clarified her vision. She was now at the next stage of her creative process. She loved names and planned to spend the next few weeks homing in on the perfect ones for her characters. Ludmila. At the moment, she had a yen for Ludmila. The trouble, however, was that Delhi was so uninspiring. Although only 25, she felt that she had spent many decades trapped in a fishbowl, circling round to the same views and impressions. Something cold and rigid was holding her back. She had never had any doubts about her ability, having been assured of preternatural success all her life. As always, it was a question of the correct milieu in which to flourish. What her creativity required was a glorious new vista, exposure to dazzling minds, a seductive environment, the silvery glint of olive trees as the sun began to dip. She would have to speak to her father about this new enterprise. She left the room and walked down the length of the corridor to the other side of the house, but found that his study was empty. Behind her, the Khurana's ancient basset hound, Sigmund, lay on an Isfahani rug at the top of the stairs, occasionally blinking with a great sense of resignation. "It's all right, Siggy," said Ania as she stepped past him. "The world really isn't as awful as you think." Sigmund closed his droopy eyes, and they remained shut. At the foot of the stairs, she could see that the lights were on in the conservatory, its blues and greens reflected in the enormous glass panes. But this room, too, was empty. She walked down another passage, past the screening room. The door was open, and she could see that a film was still playing with the sound low, Humphrey Bogart's craggy face filling the giant screen. So her father was certainly around somewhere. She eventually found him in the breakfast room, staring at a plate of grey crackers that looked like dog biscuits. "Are those for you or for Siggy?" she asked. "Technically for me. They are from Sweden. They are supposed to increase one's metabolism." "They're not the prettiest things in the world, are they?" Dilip Khurana shook his head and looked at her much in the way that Sigmund had. "Papa, sit down. I need to talk to you. I need to get away from Delhi." "Why? Is there something wrong with your air purifier?" "No, I need to be inspired. I need a real change. So just hear me out, and please don't look at me like that. It's really not a big thing. There's a writer's residency in Italy, which is absolutely amazing, and it's the one thing that will really get me going in the right direction with my book." "I see." "I'm completely serious. It's not a holiday. It's work. It's a challenge. It's growth." Dilip began to look at her with greater conviction. She put her hand on his arm and lowered her voice. "But it's obviously horribly competitive. People are judged on sample chapters and that kind of thing, which can be quite unfair for a work in progress. And that's why I need you to do me a tiny favor. There's another way of securing a place. We'd have to pay a fee, but the experience will be invaluable, worth every penny. So let's not worry about that. But I also need a letter of recommendation from someone a bit eminent. So could you please ask Alessandra to ask Clarence Lamb? They are best friends." "Clarence Lamb, the Nobel guy?" "As it happens, yes, he did win it, but please don't say Nobel guy. That sounds so gross. It's laureate. The thing is, I've heard he's so supportive of new talent. And Alessandra will obviously do anything for us. And they are really close. I found out that she stays with him all summer on some island in, well, I can't remember, somewhere. So, I think we can swing this." "Clarence Lamb? I don't know." "Papa, have you ever been asked to check your privilege?" "Check my what?" "Oh, never mind. It's this online thing. But that's sort of what I'm doing. Lots of writers can't get into this residency by calling on friends. But since I can, why should I take up one of their places? I think asking Clarence Lamb to put in a good word would be the right thing to do. It's saving other people a lot of time and trouble." "Except maybe Clarence Lamb." "He won't write the recommendation himself. He'll have people to do that. He just has to sign it." "I could ask Alessandra, I suppose. But you're serious about this, the book?" "I've never been more serious about anything. I promise you. You will not regret this." She leaned over and planted a kiss on his shoulder. He looked at her and beamed. And it was a beam, an exceptional, coruscating, pearly smile. Dilip had just returned from another visit to Dr. Wilshire, a 7-time winner at the Aesthetic Dentistry Awards, one of a series of appointments he had made on Harley Street. Although Dilip's hearing was perfectly satisfactory, now in his mid-50s, what he heard more than anything else was the tick of time. Ania was an adult, his wife long dead, and romantic liaisons thin on the ground. Where did this leave a man like him? A charismatic man, certainly, who could reel off the names of scores of friends and associates. But the question still had to be asked. Money? Everyone had money. Some people had even more than him. power. He often found
Sample complete. Ready to continue?